Which thing about the dark is that it never prepares you for what it hides. Quinn had been mapping debris fields along the outer rim of the Velthion corridor for 6 standard weeks when the scanner picked up something that shouldn't have been there. A heat signature, faint and irregular, pulsing like a second heartbeat behind a shattered fragment of what used to be a cargo hauler. The UTS Athena was a survey vessel, not a rescue ship. Quinn knew that. Protocol knew that. But protocols don't account for a signature that small, that desperate, that unmistakably alive. She brought the Athena around slowly, her hands steadier than her breathing, and when the exterior light swept across the debris, she saw it. A figure pressed into the concave shell of the wreckage, wrapped in something silver that had mostly burned away, limbs pulled tight to the body in what could only be described as a posture of last resort. The suit wasn't standard issue anything Quinn had a database for. The figure wasn't moving, but the heat signature still pulsed. Quinn had a rule about this kind of thing. She'd written it herself, in the margins of her mission log after the Dravion 5 incident, 2 years and a lifetime ago. Don't go outside for a ghost. That's what she called them. Signals that turned out to be equipment echoes, reflective debris, the death loops of automated systems too broken to know they were already gone. She'd lost a colleague to a ghost. She'd lost more than that. She went outside anyway. The figure was alive. Barely. And when Quinn maneuvered close enough to see the face behind the cracked visor, pale silver skin mapped with bioluminescent veins that had dimmed to almost nothing, features too angular to be human and too expressive to be anything less, she understood, immediately and without fully understanding why, that finding this person was not an accident. She just didn't know yet what it would cost her. The Athena's medbay was not designed for alien physiology. Quinn knew this the moment she got the figure inside and pulled back the ruined thermal wrap to find a body that breathed in patterns she couldn't predict. 3 shallow pulls, a long hold, 2 rapid exhales, and skin that reacted to the medbay's standard lighting by tightening into something resembling defense posture, even while unconscious. She dimmed the lights. She didn't know why she knew to do that. She just did. The alien was Solvathali. Quinn recognized the bioluminescent patterning from a xenobiology briefing she'd attended 3 years ago on Caldross Station, more out of boredom than professional interest. The Solvathali were a closed species, diplomatic contacts only, no integration, no cross-cultural exchange beyond the carefully managed treaty protocols that had kept a fragile peace between their territory and the outer human settlements for about 40 years. They did not wander the debris fields of Velthion. They did not end up dying in the shell of human cargo haulers. Whatever had happened here had been a long way from anything routine. Quinn ran the Athena's limited medical scanner over the alien's body and got back a report full of question marks. Internal temperature 2 degrees below what the xenobiology notes flagged as dangerous. Something the scanner identified as dehydration but couldn't quantify. A fracture along what might have been a collarbone equivalent, and bioluminescence output at 4%, which Quinn didn't know how to interpret clinically but understood intuitively the way you understand a face going pale. She did what she could. Warmed the bay to the highest setting the Athena's systems allowed. Found water, actual water, not the recycled electrolyte solution in the emergency rations, and set a container near the alien's hand in case she woke and could reach it. Wrapped her in the 2 thermal blankets Quinn had been saving since Dravian the 5, the ones she'd never let herself use because using them meant admitting she needed comfort, and somehow that felt wrong. Then Quinn sat in the chair beside the medbay bed, pulled her knees up, and waited. The alien's bioluminescent veins pulsed once, weak, blue-green, and went still again. Quinn had been alone on the Athena for 6 weeks because she'd asked to be. The Dravian 5 incident had ended her previous posting on the NSS Revenant, not officially, not in any report that anyone filed, but in the way that mattered, in the trust that other crew members stopped giving her, in the looks that started when they thought she wasn't watching. She'd volunteered for solo survey work as something between a self-imposed exile and a dare. See if you can exist out here without breaking. She hadn't broken yet. She wasn't sure if that was strength or just a longer kind of falling. The alien's breathing shifted, a 3 and a hold that ended differently than the others. She was waking up. She came back to consciousness like something surfacing from very deep water, slow, disoriented, and then suddenly, sharply, afraid. Quinn watched the alien's eyes open. They were a color she didn't have a good word for, somewhere between amber and something darker, and in the first second of wakefulness, they swept the room with a speed and precision that was not groggy or confused, but immediately tactical. Threat assessment. Quinn had seen that look before in exactly one other context, in people who had learned, at some foundational level, that waking up in an unfamiliar place was usually a danger. The alien's body stiffened. Her bioluminescent veins fired, a sharp red-orange flare that Quinn had not seen before, and it didn't take much imagination to guess what it meant. Quinn held up both hands, palms open. "You're safe," she said, knowing the words were probably useless across a language barrier, but unable to not say them. "I found you in the debris. You were... I thought you were going to die out there." The alien stared at her. The red-orange in her veins didn't fade, but it didn't intensify either. "I have water," Quinn said. She reached. Slowly, she made herself go slowly, toward the container she'd placed on the bedside shelf and moved it closer. Not into the alien's space, just closer. Available. The alien looked at the water, looked at Quinn, back at the water. There was a pause that felt enormous. Then, with a precision and deliberateness that somehow conveyed both extreme caution and extreme need, the alien reached out and took the container. She drank. Quinn watched the bioluminescent veins shift, the red-orange dimming, a pale gold threading through instead, and even without a reference guide, she understood that something had changed in the other being's internal state. Not trust, something smaller than trust. A provisional, terrified willingness to wait and see. It was enough. It was actually a great deal. The alien's voice, when she finally used it, was low and multiple, layered harmonics that seemed to come from more than one place in her chest at once. And the first thing she said was a word Quinn didn't know. But the second thing she said was a phrase Quinn recognized from the Caldros briefing, the formal Solvathali opener used in all the diplomatic contact protocols. "I am without my people. I am without my designation. I ask your category." Quinn blinked. That last part wasn't in the briefing, but she could guess. "My name is Quinn. I'm human. I fly survey routes for the United Terran Survey Corps." She paused. "What's your name?" Another long moment. "Vora," the alien said, and the word in her layered voice carried something Quinn could only describe as weight, like a name that had survived something its owner wasn't sure she had. She had been in the hauler for 11 days. That was what Quinn eventually pieced together over the following hours, partly from Vora's careful, precise language. She spoke basic with an accent that turned every vowel into something richer, and partly from her own reading of the Athena's debris field scan data. The cargo hauler had been a human vessel, running unsanctioned routes through Solvathali territory. Vora had been aboard not as crew, but as something Quinn took a while to correctly understand, a political observer, sent by her people's Continuance Council to document treaty violations. She had been documenting. The hauler crew had discovered her before she could transmit her records. What happened next was written in the debris field. Vora had survived because she was very good at very small spaces, and because she had the kind of determination that most species reserve for their most desperate moments, and that seemed, in Vora, to be simply a baseline condition. She was, Quinn gathered slowly, a significant person among her people. Not a bureaucrat, something closer to a witness, a formal role, a protected designation under Solvathali law, which was exactly why the hauler crew had been so motivated to ensure she never transmitted what she'd seen. This was the part that changed things. "You understand," Vora said carefully, on what Quinn thought was hour 3 of their conversation, "that what I carry in my memory record is not simply data. It is testimony. It is actionable testimony. There are individuals who will pursue its suppression and a pause, a harmonic flicker, removal." "I understand," Quinn said. "And you are still here," Vora observed. Not a question, not quite an accusation, something more careful than both. "I'm still here," Quinn confirmed. Vora studied her with those amber and dark eyes. Her bioluminescence was running mostly gold now, with occasional threads of something cooler, a blue that came and went like a thought not yet finished. "I do not understand your motivation," she said finally. "I have reviewed what I know of human psychology. You have no obligation. You have considerable risk. Your instinct should be to..." Another pause, and this time Quinn got the sense the pause was translational rather than emotional. "Preserve your own continuance." Quinn thought about the 2 thermal blankets, about the Dravion 5 incident, about the way she'd volunteered for 6 weeks alone in a debris field to figure out if she could still be trusted with her own company. "I think," she said slowly, "I'm still figuring out what my instincts are for." The blue in Vora's bioluminescence ran longer than usual, and this time it didn't fade. Something was coming. Quinn picked it up on long-range scan early on the second day. A ship running with minimal emissions signature, which was not how any legitimate vessel operated. Vora, who had recovered enough to sit upright and move carefully through the Athena's small common space, went very still when Quinn told her. How many hours? Vora asked. 14, maybe 15 if they're being cautious. Quinn was already at the navigation console. I can push the Athena to a relay station inside 12, but I need you to tell me something first. Vora looked at her. Is there anyone on your side I can call? Any frequency, any coded signal that gets your people moving faster than a relay can? The silence that followed was different from Vora's earlier silences. Longer, more internal. Quinn had learned in the past day to read Vora's bioluminescence the way you learn to read weather. Not perfectly, not scientifically, but with the body knowledge that comes from paying attention. The gold was still there, but something underneath it was shifting, something Quinn didn't have a name for, and she watched it move through Vora's veins like a tide going out. There is a frequency, Vora said at last. It is personal, not official. It reaches someone I trust, though I have not contacted her in some time. A pause. She may not respond to a human transmission. That's why I was going to have you make the call, Quinn said. Vora looked at her again in that way she had, the one that seemed to involve all of her, not just her eyes, as if her whole nervous system was engaged in the act of assessment. You have a plan, she said. I have the beginning of one. The rest I'm figuring out as I go. This is, Vora said carefully, a deeply unsettling approach to survival. Yeah, Quinn said. I've been told. For the first time since Quinn had pulled her out of a dying wreck in the middle of nowhere, something crossed Vora's face that was not fear, not calculation, not the exhausted dignity of someone refusing to be broken. It was something smaller, something that, on a human face, Quinn would have called the moment before a smile. The pursuing ship crossed their last known safe point. They were running hard through the Veltion corridor when Vora told her about Kayla. It came out sideways, the way the important things always do. They were working in close quarters, both bent over the communications array, while Quinn tried to boost signal range, and Vora worked the frequency calibration with hands that moved with a precision that was almost painful to watch. And somehow, in the middle of that, between technical exchanges, Vora said, I had a bonded colleague on Velthos. Before my appointment to the Continuance Council, Quinn waited. She was also a witness, Vora said. She was documenting a different violation, a supply route diversion. The people she was documenting found her before she could transmit. The bioluminescent veins in Vora's hands ran a color Quinn had never seen on her, something deep and bruised, almost purple, there and gone. She did not survive her removal. The quiet between them after that was not uncomfortable. It was the quiet of something being understood without being dissected. That's why you don't transmit until you're certain, Quinn said. That is why I do not trust, Vora said. And then, a moment later, with a care that felt like it cost something, that is why I did not trust. Past tense. Quinn looked at her. Vora did not look up from the frequency calibration, but the gold in her veins ran bright and steady, and Quinn understood she wasn't meant to say anything in response. Some acknowledgments exist past words. She turned back to the signal boost and said nothing, and felt, quietly and without ceremony, something shift between them into a new configuration it would never shift back out of. The communications array locked onto the frequency. The pursuing ship was 11 hours out when Vora's contact answered. The voice that came through was female, Solvathali, and immediately alert in a way that told Quinn this woman had been waiting for exactly this kind of call, even if she hadn't known it. She spoke too fast for Quinn to follow, but Vora responded with calm precision, and Quinn caught enough. The name of the Continuance Council, the word for witness, the phrase that the briefing had flagged as a legal emergency declaration. To know that whatever was being arranged, it was serious, and it was real. Then Vora said something that made her contact go silent for a full 3 seconds. And then Vora looked at Quinn and said, I told her a human took me in. A human gave me water and blankets and asked nothing in return, and is currently running a survey vessel through a hostile corridor to get me to a relay station. A pause. She wants to know your designation. My name, Quinn said. Tell her my name is Quinn. Vora relayed this. The contact responded with something short and waited. She says, Vora translated slowly, that she did not believe humans still did such things. Quinn didn't have a good answer for that. She thought about the Dravian 5 incident, about the day she'd made a choice that everyone else had considered wrong and she'd considered the only possible, and the way she'd been quietly, efficiently punished for it by people who'd called it a liability and meant it as a compliment. She thought about the colleagues she'd tried to get back and didn't. She thought about sitting alone on a survey ship for 6 weeks, daring herself to still exist. I didn't always believe it either, she said. The Solvathali vessel came out of transit 7 hours later, faster than anything Quinn had calculated, and it was not a small ship. It was not a ship you sent for a single continuance witness. It was a ship you sent when something political had escalated to something military, and the pursuing vessel, which had been closing distance with grim patience, changed course so fast its drive signature actually stuttered on Quinn's scanner. They were not being chased anymore. Quinn sat with that for a moment, let it settle. Vora came to stand beside her at the forward viewport. Her bioluminescence was running a color Quinn hadn't seen before, layered blues and golds in a pattern that moved slowly, almost like breathing, and it was the most beautiful thing Quinn had seen since she'd started flying, and she'd seen a lot of beautiful things. That frequency, Vora said quietly, belonged to my people's senior tactical liaison. We trained together, a long time ago. You had more than a feeling she'd send a big ship, Quinn said. I had, Vora said, a significant feeling, yes. Quinn laughed. It was a short laugh, surprised out of her, and she felt it land differently than laughter usually did. Lighter, less complicated. Vora's bioluminescence flickered. That sound, Vora said. I have read about human laughter. I did not expect it to. She paused, and the pause was not translational this time. Feel that way. How does it feel? Vora considered this with the gravity she brought to everything. Like your thermal blankets, she said at last. Unnecessary for survival, completely necessary for something else. Quinn looked at her. The viewport filled with the approach of the Solvathali ship. Enormous, beautiful, clearly meant to make a point. And Vora was still there beside her, silver skin and dimming and brightening veins, and a face that had stopped looking like threat assessment and started looking like something that was trying to learn a new expression. This was the moment. Quinn recognized it the way you recognize things that have been true for a while before you let yourself see them. The moment where early detail completes its arc, where the small thing becomes the real thing. She had given Vora water from a container she'd placed nearby, not handed to her, not forced, just made available. She had given her thermal blankets she'd been hoarding for her own comfort, as if comfort was something she no longer deserved. She had gone outside for what she'd told herself might be a ghost. She hadn't gone outside for a ghost. She'd gone outside for this. The transfer was formal, which Vora had prepared her for, and emotional, which Vora had not, or perhaps had not known how to. The Solvathali crew that came aboard the Athena were precise and professional, and clearly trying very hard not to stare at Quinn, who was trying equally hard not to stare back. Vora spoke with them at length in rapid Solvathali, while Quinn stayed at the navigation console and told herself she was giving them privacy. Then Vora came back. She stood in the doorway of the forward cabin and said, "There will be an inquiry. The testimony I carry will reach the Continuance Council through the proper channels. The hauler's crew will be identified." A pause. "The treaty violations that Kayla documented before her death will also be formally entered into the record. Her name will be given its proper weight." Quinn felt something tighten in her chest and then release. "That's good," she said. "That's really good." "Yes." Vora moved into the cabin. She was holding something. Small, flat, a piece of material Quinn didn't recognize, dense with markings in a script she couldn't read. She held it out. "This is my witness mark. It is," she paused, "not precisely translatable. But in giving it to someone, a Solvathali says, I have seen you clearly. I have counted you among the things that are real and true." Her voice stayed level, but the bioluminescence in her hands was running the deep, layered blue gold again, the pattern like breathing. "We give it very rarely. The last time I gave one was to Kayla." Quinn took it. She held it carefully. The material was warm in a way that didn't seem to come from handling. She thought about something she'd said early in their first conversation, almost offhand, almost thoughtless, the kind of thing you say when you're trying to explain why you went outside for something that might have been a ghost. "I'd take care of you," she'd said, "until you were better." Basic words. Survey crew words. She'd said them the way you say things you mean but don't expect to matter. She hadn't known what they meant to Asalvathali. She hadn't known that in Vora's language and culture, that particular phrase, spoken by one being to another in a moment of vulnerability, was not casual, was not small, was not the kind of thing you unsaid. She knew now. She looked down at the witness mark and thought about every version of herself that had arrived at this specific moment. The one who'd stayed too long on the Revenant, the one who'd gone outside for a ghost, the one who'd sat in a medbay chair with her knees up and waited without knowing why waiting was the right thing to do. They had all, apparently, been moving in one direction. I didn't know what I was promising, Quinn said. I know, Vora said. That made it more true, not less. Outside the viewport, the Solvathali ship was enormous and close, its running lights moving in patterns that Quinn now suspected, with a warmth she hadn't had room for 6 weeks ago, might not be purely navigation signals. Vora turned to go. She stopped once at the door, bioluminescence at full gold, and didn't look back. But something in the set of her shoulders, in the precise way she held herself, was different from the figure Quinn had found pressed into broken wreckage, waiting to not be found. She walked out changed. Quinn was already changed. The debris field outside was the same as it always was, silent and scattered and full of things that looked like nothing until the light hit them correctly. But Quinn had learned, definitively and for keeps, that the things in the dark worth finding will always pulse, no matter how faintly. And the ones worth going outside for are never really ghosts at all.